I fucking love that because honestly, I hate wearing a freaking packer because
Me
I feel like
too.
I'm wearing another man's dick in my pants. And
Whoa.
to me, let's be real, like it's like I'm confident with what the hell I have, my little chub rub that I've grown through tea.
Yeah.
It does things.
It does things. It does plenty.
It's like, wait a second, that's a little. It gets hard. It does. I mean, it does what it needs to do.
It
you know.
does. Yeah.
And
also, if you think about it, our combination of body type and hormones, being on testosterone and having been born this way, we have the most sensitive type of genitals in the world. Like out of everybody.
meaning we come.
We come. We have like more sensitive than a dick and more sensitive than a pussy that's not on testosterone. Think about it.
Oh, I know
We
about
won.
it. I felt it because I mean the difference between like having the hormone reaction in your body with testosterone and then also having the sensitivity of like a clitoris that is stimulated by T with growth, et cetera, et cetera. Oh my God. Like, especially in the first 2 years, I was a horny little toad.
God, yeah.
Like, give me a break. Like, I could touch my thighs and I was like, yeah, bitch.
Yeah. I remember not being able to get much done in my first few years of being on T.
Don't remind me.
It was tough. It was really tough. I was 18 too. So like I was already at an age where like I would be horny all the time. And then it was like on top of it.
So you got like the double whammy of that situation.
Yeah. I mean, I also had this thought recently, like I was never perceived as an adult woman. I was always like, I went from teen girl, being perceived as a teen girl to then being perceived as like a teen boy.
Yeah.
And then whatever this is, man.
Yeah.
And I think that's really fascinating because like my trajectory is a lot different than a lot of other trans masks that I know.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly. And I can relate to that because I mean, similar journey.
Yeah.
I fucking came out of the womb ready to go to be trans.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, like, I have never experienced what it's like to be an adult as a female. And Jesus, just you saying that right now is like, whoa, wait a second.
It's trippy.
It's trippy, but it's also like, as you were saying that, I almost was like gonna cry because I'm thinking about all the activism that happened to make that moment for you too, that there is like this beautiful thing that I see with the younger generation of you don't have to face the same traumas we do. You are more economically well off. You're more not high educated. Your access to education is greater. Your access to success, to relationships is greater. And it's because of these moments in activism that, granted, I know sometimes we've made some mistakes here and there, but like with you as existing and just hearing your story right now, I literally was just like taken back. I was like, wait a second, like, oh my God, you haven't had to experience like the horrific side of like identifying, knowing who you are, and then but still having to like live in the corporate world as a woman and pay your bills that way, which that's a whole nother layer of trauma that folks from the older generations have to deal with. And it's that's just beautiful.
It is
that you've been able to do that, but it's also a really unique experience for you too, because at the same time, like there's not much representation. So you're kind of walking a path that is yet to be walked. You're creating your own lane. Yeah.
I would say, I don't know. I mean, I haven't met a lot of folks who've had that story.
Yeah.
But I know that there will be more and more, you know, because there are kids coming out younger and younger. And like 18 now is not that young compared to, you know, the 5 or 6 year olds coming out and having supportive parents and, you know, being able to transition before it gets bad, before it gets so bad. And for me, like I've heard those stories and been like, I've gone through, you know, waves of emotions hearing those stories of like being jealous immediately and then feeling like, God, like I wish if only I had that story, and then being like, holy shit, like that's like that happening is just evidence that like we are making a difference by existing.
Yeah.
And like the folks who came before us probably feel the same way about me, you know? And like, it's just, I don't know. Like you said, we don't have to go through the same traumas. That's not like, that's not the point of all of this.
No, I mean, my biggest thing is once I learned, and this is not necessarily like the LGBT or the trans community, but it's the LGBT community as a whole. folks in the LGBT community are just automatically economically at challenge because they're not going to get to experience a lot of the same things in high school, get those social experiences, get those certain jobs and certain things because they're dealing with other things simultaneously in high school that their straight counterparts are not dealing with. So they get to excel in an economic way that we as a community have to face the duality at the same time of like figuring out how to navigate the world by also figuring out how to pay our bills and grow up and be adults. And there's a certain advantage there that kind of happens to folks that don't experience that because then they get to kind of use their energy on enriching themselves and learning how to do their taxes or buy a house and things when we're worried about like, oh my God, am I going to be homeless because my mom hates me or something like that.
Right.
The duality in that is the big reason why I've always been in activism because I'm trying to lessen especially the economic effects because economically we as a community, it's our biggest challenge. Like money, finances, it really solves a lot of problems, unfortunately, as much as they say money doesn't make you happy. But at a certain threshold, it solves a lot of problems when it comes to access to healthcare, to, just food.
Being fed makes me happy.
Thank you.
Having a roof makes me very happy.
Oh my God, right?
So it's like, I feel like the people who say money doesn't buy happiness are the rich people who still hate themselves, being like, my money didn't make me love myself or make my life better. And they just don't have the perspective of the journey of like not having anything to then having something.
Yeah.
And I think like it's really hard to understand why we would think that money buys happiness when you haven't had the same like context, I guess.
Yeah.
Because I've lived in the poverty bracket my entire adulthood, and I still struggle with money to this day because I couldn't focus in school because I had undiagnosed ADHD, which, is a huge issue for folks who were assigned female at birth. And then also on top of that, being trans and having dysphoria and, just whatever.
Yeah.
I was distracted. I was like, how am I going to focus on homework? Like, I want to not be here,
You're not going to learn the quadratic formula while you're sitting here like learning, like dealing with the inner turmoil of a lot of different things that most kids are not facing at that age.
And like for some, I've talked to some trans folks who are like, oh, I took all my dysphoria and buried it with doing my homework and being an extremely amazing student.
Nice. I can't do that.